Everybody. This is Will It Blend, building an effective online and face-to-face learning in a high school environment. So give you a little bit of introduction to what I'm going to cover today. I'll go some introductions to my team. I'm the only one presenting today, but I'll go over everybody that's worked in this presentation. Kind of talk about our journey, how we got to where we are with our blended boot camp. And then the process that we went through to create this cohort and this boot camp, and then how it's gone. This has actually been our first year going through it with teachers and kind of give you some feedback on what those teachers have taken out of the program and lessons that we've learned, and then give you some resources to pass on so that you can kind of continue down the same journey that we have. So here's our team, myself up there in the corner. I'm the Director of Technology here at Windermere Prep. I started out as our Educational Technology Specialist, and then this past year I moved into the role of Director of Technology. Dr. Brenda Fields is our Latin teacher. She came on when we did our UCF project, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Amanda Youngblood is one of our English teachers here, and Kelly Barman is a science teacher. So one of the things that I did from the very beginning when starting my group was trying to get cross-curricular, and by having, basically two languages, one foreign, one English teacher, and then one science, I felt like I was going to get a good feedback from all the different levels that were out in our high school. So that was very cognizant in the beginning of who I was choosing, and there was a reason for that. So how this all began was we really wanted to start merging a traditional school day with some online. But what we did was, and you'll see here in a minute, we're trying to figure out what our goal was. And then the other thing that it kind of started from was, what was our program before? We brought in Canvas. We had been using things like Edmodo, Haiku, and that kind of thing, and there wasn't a lot of success. So we wanted to, I tried the face-to-face trainings where I sat in and everybody sat in there, pulled out their computer, and we said, click here, do this, click here, do that. Just didn't work. People could get those on the online community. They could learn on their own. There really wasn't any need for that. I wasn't getting anywhere, and I wasn't getting people to use Canvas the way I wanted to. So what I started to do was I wanted to make sure that, one, they could create modules, okay? I wanted to look at blended and find out, okay, how can I get teachers to use the face-to-face things that they do so well, but then blend the wonderful features in Canvas or any learning management system for that matter. And then I also wanted them to be able to, this program to be successful, I wanted them to use it at a much higher rate than just putting in PDFs into Canvas. And then I also wanted to have a plan for going forward. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. The same goals that we had are the same goals that I have for this presentation. So kind of start, I'll rewind a little bit where our journey began. 3 years ago when I came over, like I said, school was using a whole bunch of different LMSs, and I knew we had to pick one. We did a small group of teachers, and we came out that Canvas was the one that was chosen. And like I said, when we rolled it out that first year, the usage rate was not very high. Teachers knew how to use it, but they just weren't using it that much. So I started to do some research because I knew I didn't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. I knew that some people were already out there doing it. And given that we are a college preparatory school, I went out and started searching what are colleges using, which colleges are using Canvas, and which ones are doing a good job at it. So it just so happened, I got a little bit lucky, that UCF right here in our backyard developed this thing called the Blend Kit. Now, if you're not familiar with the Blend Kit, at the end of the presentation, you'll see that I provide that resource to them, and they were fantastic. We actually went out to UCF, kind of the nice thing about them being in our backyard, and met with them, and we talked about how they approach blended. Now, given that they are a college and we are a high school, there are a lot of things that they were doing that we just could not do. They run a lot of classes physically blended, where they meet in class and then they have some online assignments, where here at a high school, we don't do that. We meet every day. So we almost kind of fake blend it. as some of my teachers say. But a lot of the things that we took out of that course led to where we are today. So we took their Blend Kit course. And the grand thing is it's open source. They gave us full rights to use it in our course, use what we want, use some of their research, which was very generous of them. And we we built our course. So here were some takeaways from those meetings and that whole process of our teachers going through Blend Kit. The one thing that we had done was we built a cohort model. So that was the number one thing that we took from this is get a small group of teachers and use them to go through the process. They then become the leaders of the program going forward. So that was one of the biggest things. For me as a director, it had to be teacher-led. Me standing in front of a group of teachers is only going to get so far. But as soon as they start talking to their peers, it totally changes the landscape. And I can tell you just from this year, it has completely changed the landscape. If I stand in front of them, teach them, we wouldn't have got this far. Because it's led by teachers to teachers, it's been huge. The other one was a mentor model. So anybody that was in our cohort with this first year was given a mentor and somebody that had gone through Blend Kit or has done blended learning in the past. So quasi-experts. And then throughout the process, they will meet with them from time to time. And we'll talk about more of that here in a little bit. So what were some of the things that was missing from the UCF Blend Kit? So it wasn't built around a high school curriculum, which I mentioned before. It was 100% about a college, and they are fully upfront with that. This is made for colleges. You have to take out of it what you can. And then the other one, which I've brought out a couple times now, is how do we blend while we're still meeting with the students every day, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Teacher buy-in, how do we get teachers to go into this cohort model, and then follow through. So biggest thing that came from me is making sure that teachers follow through, and we don't just, I don't know how many professional developments I've sat through in the past. You sit through it, you get it, and then it's never brought up again. So you get sit and get, and then they just expect you to become experts overnight. So that was one of the things we want to make sure is that we constantly are following through with these teachers to make sure that what they've done is continuing to grow. It's not just, you get a one-time shot and suddenly you're a Superman. So after coming back from UCF and we kind of digested it, we decided to take about 2 or 3 days in the summer and meet as a group and plan out how we were going to take everything we got from that and all these other great resources that we had found and make them our own. So we started out our planning process. So one of the things that we do here at the school is we try to look at everything as backward design. So we took that into the same process. So what do we want our teachers to walk away with in this program? And what should we expect them to be able to do? What do they need to learn and practice in order to do these things? So what are the activities that we're going to put into our program so that they can do that? And then what are the resources? We knew that there were a lot of good resources with Blend Kit, but we also knew that we just didn't want to repackage Blend Kit. That wasn't the purpose. We wanted to take what pertained to us and then find some things that were more suited towards high school when it was all said and done. So we really started with what is blended at our school, what is blended at WPS. I think that's so important for anybody that's going to do this going forward, because what blended is at our school is a little bit different from UCF, and it may be different from another school in rural Indiana. So it's you got to determine what is blended in your school and then stick with that. Then we came up with the structure. So we know what we're going to be doing. We came up with the structure of the course. How many times are we going to meet? What's going to be face-to-face? What's going to be online? And then from there, we started building up the activities. And as you can see, it's everything we talked about with backwards design. It's just working ourselves backwards and ending up. We know where we want them to get, but how do we get them there? We work our way back through that. So this is what probably took the most time. I'll be dead honest with you. Was really breaking down how are we going to do it? Are we going to do it by units? Are we going to do it by, the exact same way that UCF did it? And we really decided to break it into modules, and they were almost like units. And we really started to take a look at, and I'll kind of come over here and this will explain. This was our planning board. This is the clean version of it. It did take some changes and it molded over time. But as you can see, we started to put in there, all right, topics of concern. Notice the one thing that we really took back from the blend kit was that every course at UCF had a, how do I navigate this course? And so that was one of the first things we put into place was we had to make sure that all teachers, when they came out of this, they put that in there. And now with Commons, it makes it pretty easy. They can just bring it in from a course that we've put out there and it shares it out with everyone. And if you kind of look at through the slides there, you'll notice that we talked about, we started real basic. What is blended learning? What are some of the interactions? What does assessment look like? What are the activities that support assessment look like? And so we really tried to walk them through from very base level all the way up to the much more complicated, which was, how do I do that? So from there, we talked about, so we had this nice plan. We also knew that we wanted to do it 3 different ways. We wanted to have meetings with them face-to-face because this was a blended, so we wanted to model that. We also wanted to make sure that every meeting had an agenda. There's nothing worse than going into a meeting and there's nothing planned. You're just kind of winging it. So we made sure that that agenda always matched what was going on in that unit. And then we always made sure that after they left, they had something practical for them to do and build a course. Now, one of the things I didn't talk about was when they left this course, they should have a good working course for them to take into the next year. That's how we really have sold it to all our teachers. When you're done with this program, you're going to be able to come out of here with a working, a wonderfully done course that's all already done. It's going to take a lot of work, but you're going to have 95% of the work done for the next school year so you can focus in on teaching. So that was great. And then the final thing was we're going to have cohort meetings, and then we were also going to make sure that they met with their mentors, which I mentioned before is very helpful to the teachers, and you'll see that they actually talk about it later. So at that point, we continued to flesh out the modules, just kind of showing you how our process was going. We started working on it, like I said, it's like 2 or 3 days. So once everything was done, we started out the program. So the blended bootcamp portion of it was very important. We were now bringing in teachers to run this program that we had designed. And the biggest thing we did was the first day we brought them in for a half day. So we did some of them in the morning, some of them in the afternoon, and we introduced the whole program to them. And as Amanda likes to say, we wined and dined them. We are a private school, so we had that. No, I'm just joking. We didn't really have the ability to do that, but we did feed them, which was important because we got people in that everyone kind of took their guard down. And it was really nice to just have discussions about what is blended to them. And it really put it out on the table that, all right, here are your expectations for this course, and here's the roadmap. Here's what we're going to do. That feedback from that was huge because all the teachers said that day really is what kept them through the program because they knew this was not anything top down. It's going to be a discussion throughout the entire thing. So from there, I kind of want to take you now inside of what a module looked like. And I've kind of talked about this a little bit. With each module, they would come in and then meet again. So after that first meeting where we got them together and we talked about what is blended and we fed them, we then released them and we gave them some assignments. And then that next module, we gave them some pre-reading assignments. So background information on what we're going to be talking about. Then we would come together and meet and talk about what they had read and some things that they had not necessarily read. So really one of the keys to blended is making sure that whatever they've done online has meaning. It's not, I believe what they said in UCF was course and a half. Don't have your course face-to-face and don't ever touch the things that you touch on online. That was very important. So then we would have our meeting, and then on their own, they would reflect on, all right, pre-reading and what we did in our meeting, how can I combine that together? If you take a look at the pre-reading assignment, we did that a little bit differently as well. we tried to take into account the different learning styles. So we wanted to make sure that, you know, for those that are big visual learners, we tried to find a video for each of our units. That way there was always, you know, if you don't have a whole lot of time and you just want to watch this video, you can still get the information that's needed in this. If you're that type of person that likes to sit and read and do a lot of research, we made sure that we always backed it up with some kind of reading or research paper. And then we always tried to try to visual, whether it be a diagram or maybe an infographic, any of those things we tried to add in. So we really tried to hit all the different learning styles so that when someone's coming into this, they could really digest what topic we were talking about. So then as the year went on, the cohort meetings became, I think, the students' favorite part, because not only were they learning new topics or new skills that we were teaching in the unit, but it also gave them a time to talk about what's going well in their blended course, what's not going well, maybe ideas, here's something I've tried. And so it really got teachers just talking about learning, which was, in my opinion, the best part. The amount of sharing that was going on in that cohort, if you've ever been through any type of cohort, that's what drives it, is because you start to become a small little group and you really start to form those bonds and friendships in the cohort, which allows you to open up, which is huge. One of the activities that most of the students really, I think, is the most powerful, we ended up getting a majority of it from UCF, and it was this mixed map. And I would highly suggest anybody that's going to pull this blended program and try to use it at their school is use this mixed map. And so what the activity is, think about all the activities you're going to do in a course, right? Write them all out. And then you start to think, all right, which ones lend them to a face-to-face type environment? Which one lends themselves to an online environment? And which one could actually be done in both? And the reason that that's so powerful is it really gets teachers thinking about, could I do this activity better online, or is this something that I really have to do face-to-face? It's really just a good exercise for any teacher to do, because it really starts them to think about, is this activity, does it have any worth? Why am I doing this with my students? And if so, how can I do it better? So when you take a look at this, it really kind of gives you some ideas of how, as an instructor, am I going to present this to my students? And if it's really important, maybe I should hit it face-to-face and online. Then I really start to emphasize it in both spaces. So this mixed map will always be something that I think all the students get a lot out of. One of the other things that we had done was working on doing discussion boards and having them do written assignments, both. I'll talk more about discussion boards just because I feel like that has, even at CanvasCon, when we were there, I went to a session on discussion boards, and the power of them, I don't think a lot of teachers see. And I would include myself in that one, because a lot of times people see that as just another way for students to post. But if used properly, discussion boards can be very, very powerful, because I think one of the things that I picked up from CanvasCon was that it gives those students that don't necessarily talk in the classroom a voice online. But you've got to make sure that they know that their voice is heard, or they're not. Then you're going to get the I agree with type discussion boards. So discussion boards are something that I would really highly recommend anybody that's looking at doing this into investing some time. And we have a whole section in our blended cohort when we talk about discussion boards. So that was always something that's very, very important. So the mentor meetings, these were an important thing that we talked about in the summer that we wanted to make sure that we took, because we didn't get mentor meetings when we did the blend kit, because obviously it was an online MOOC scenario, so you didn't really have anybody that had gone through the program. But I found that when I would meet with my mentors, we would just come and talk about, all right, how did that assignment go? It's a little bit like a smaller version of the cohort, the larger meetings as a group. but you get that one-to-one or one-to-two scenario where you can really start to talk to the teacher and figure out what they're doing with the assignment, what problems they're having, how their students are reacting to it. And it really started to, as it says there, alleviate their fear of, it's that one-to-one. We all want that in a class. And so by doing that, you start to model for the teachers that they need to do that with their students. And at the same time, they get one-on-one time. In a large group setting, somebody may not want to share or ask that question, but in a one-to-one or a one-to-two scenario, they're going to be a lot less fearful when they go to ask those types of questions. And at the same time, they let them know that somebody's checking up on them. Hey, how are you coming on that assignment? I haven't noticed you haven't turned it in. And same things we ask that our teachers do in the classroom. So we tried to model that in this program. So how did this first cohort go? I can tell you that we had a few teachers drop out for personal reasons, whatever. We started out with 8, and I think we ended up with 4, maybe 5 teachers that finished the program. I'm going to show you a video here in just a second of one of our teachers that went through the program, and she's really changed the way she's learning. I'm going to tell a little personal story about one of our teachers. When I came here 3 years ago and I told one of the high school teachers that we were going to go to Canvas, he's like, oh, no, that won't last. We've always had people change what we're doing, and it's never worked. So I took that on as a personal challenge, and he ended up actually being in this first cohort. And at the end of the program, he has since come back and sent us a letter that says, I want to apologize for what I said first year, because this program has really made me take a look at my teaching style. And because of Canvas and this program, I can really start to see the benefit of a blended classroom. So that made me feel good, but it also put some legitimacy to the program itself to let me know that this is something we want to continue doing. If we can take somebody that was a non-believer and completely flip them around and make them a believer, there's some value in this program. So this is Anna, and hopefully you guys will be able to hear the sound here.
Hi, my name is Anna Heileman, and currently I teach AP European History as well as US History Honors at Windermere Prep. My experience with the blended course so far here has been, I have really enjoyed it. I think the most useful things are learning how to use Canvas in a more effective way even this year before we roll out any kind of blended as a school. I have already made changes to my class on a daily basis, just thinking of that model in mind of what can they do outside of class with proper directions and what is best done face-to-face in that model. So I found that really helpful. Also, all the people that went through this course before have really helped by giving suggestions, as well as showing us how they have incorporated blended into this model, and I've just really enjoyed it.
So one of the things, and that was kind of important for us to get that from our teachers that went through the program, because we use basically this same presentation to get teachers excited about the program for next year. We're actually looking to expand it to a summer program, so it would run over the summer and then during the school year. I think we've got maybe 8 to 10 teachers that have already asked to be in the program, because what's happened is the teachers that are in the cohort currently go back to their teams, whether it be social science or English or whatever, and talk about the things that they're learning. And it's almost self-promoted the program, because people are starting to see, oh, well, I want to do that in my courses. I want to be better at using Canvas. So it's really spurred the other teachers to want to be involved. So some advice going forward, the cohort model, as I kind of hopefully explained, is the key to the success in this. It really gets teachers that small group setting. I know that from a director's point of view, sometimes you want to just drop it on everybody and say everyone has to be here on this date. But I can tell you that the amount or the distance that we've moved teachers in this year, now we've only moved 5 of them, but the distance that we've moved those 5 is so far beyond what we would have done in a year with my entire staff that it outweighs the benefits of dumping it on everybody. So I think it's going to just grow exponentially, because as it grows, more and more teachers are going to get interested, and they're all going to reap the benefits of the cohort. As you can see there, make sure that the cohorts are cross-curricular. We started that way with ours. We had one from each division, math, science, and so on. I think it's important because who I would have thought would have been high flyers in this last cohort would not have been my chorus teacher. She's now taking Canvas in a way that I never would have expected her to, because what she's done is she's starting to use the video feature and the voice record feature, and what used to take her days to be able to record and listen to students singing a certain piece, she can now have them do it on their own and turn it in. She would have never, if I had given her that suggestion on her own, she may have done it, but because it kind of came out and they started talking about it in the cohort and they tested it in a meeting, she's now using it, and some of my other teachers are starting to be like, well, I want to do that. I want them to give their speeches that way. So cross-curricular is huge because they start to share those ideas, and it builds camaraderie in your school as well. And then finally, obviously make it fun. We meet with them from time to time. We make sure that we provide them with some food, and we try to make it so that it's not like your typical PD. It's really bonding amongst the group. It's not just sit and get. So I think that's huge. So here's the links that I was telling you about. Blinkit, if you just do a search for UCF Blinkit, it will come up. A lot of fantastic resources out there. And if you get a chance to go through the program, I would suggest it. It is a lot of work. I can tell you it's a lot of work. In here is a link to our planning document, which if you remember back from the first couple of slides, it was just the notes from how we created our modules. So we'd like to give that to everybody. And then obviously there is a link to the presentation itself. So that is pretty much it. We've done I think we've done a pretty good job. We just got to make sure now. One of the things I talked about is follow-up. One of the things that we've talked about doing is making sure that anybody that has gone through the program then becomes a mentor. We're not going to necessarily force them to become a mentor. If somebody doesn't want to become a mentor, we always have Amanda and Kelly and those ladies to do it that way. So we always have somebody to fall back on. But I think it will have more meaning to the program if somebody that's already graduated from the program then becomes a mentor. So that's probably the most important thing, in my opinion, to the group. So, that is it.
Thank you, Nick. If there are any additional questions, I will see them in the live chat, but there hasn't been any questions posted there yet.
Okay. Yeah, I put that at the end here if anybody has any questions, but my contact information was back at the beginning. If anybody ever needs to get a hold of us, there's our contact information. Feel free to reach out to us there on Twitter, and we'll be happy to answer any questions and share with anybody if need be.
Perfect. And if you also want to get a hold of Nick, he's also in the community, and we'll post this information in the event page as well. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you everybody for being here. We hopefully will see more of this in the future. And Nick, this was an excellent presentation, and I would love to see you share more of these insights. This is great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for inviting us. Appreciate it.